All right, I want to play a game, so I need 2 volunteers. And wait a minute, before you even volunteer, I need you to know what is at stake here. The winner will receive a crisp $10 bill. And by that, I mean 2 wrinkled $5 bills because I couldn't find a crisp $10 bill. Okay. Man. Okay, so I gotta do this because it is our last, so I'm gonna pick seniors, all right? So what if we do CJ and Savannah, is your hand up? Come on up, Savannah! You had your hand up. Yeah, come on up. Okay. Come on, don't be shy. Okay. You guys, stand on here in the spotlight, okay? We're gonna play a classic. It's called Rock, Paper, Scissors. Have you heard of it? Are you familiar?
Can you explain it to me?
Okay. So this is a game where, I know you guys know Rock, Paper, Scissors. Okay, so here's what's gonna happen. We're gonna do Rock, Paper, Scissors, shoot. Best 2 out of 3, okay? You got it? All right, so get in position. Here we go. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Ooh, all right. We got 1-0 over here. Yeah, come on. All right, this is your opportunity to tie. Okay, here we go. In position. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Oh. Okay. Okay, here we go. 1-1. In position. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Oh. Okay, here we go again. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Oh, hold on. First of all, winner! Give it up for her. You can go ahead and sit down. You stay. CJ, you have been awarded with the crisp $10 bill. That is actually 2 wrinkly 5s. Here you go.
Thank you so much.
Take it. Go ahead and have a seat. Why? You don't think that that's fair? You don't think, why? Why is that not fair? You don't think this, okay, hold on. Go with me for a second, okay? Here, focus. Okay, just go with me here for a second, okay? I believe that the way our minds operate tells us that when someone wins something, that they are the ones who deserve the prize. They deserve the glory, they deserve the applause, they deserve the attention, and even in society, when we have people who are viewed as being successful, who are viewed as having the best life, like we usually call them winners, right? We call those people the winners. So naturally, I think that we all think the same thing when it comes to Jesus. Follow with me for a second. For those of you in this room who claim to follow Jesus, who have made Jesus your Lord, who call yourself a Christian, a lot of times when we make that decision to follow Jesus and we become saved, we view that as winning. And we even use that phrase. We go around saying, we're winning people to Christ. We have to win as many people to Christ as possible. You've never heard that before? Well, that was said all the time when I was growing up. We got to win people to Christ. So, when that happens, a lot of times we think that now that we've chosen to follow Jesus, we've won, we've become saved, now we get the prizes. We get this great, perfect, happy, carefree, stress-free life. Everything goes our way. But my question tonight is, what if we are following the wrong Jesus? What if we're following the wrong Jesus? A lot of times we get this idea that Jesus is the one who gives us everything, that Jesus solves all our problems at no cost, but I believe that that is not the right Jesus. I believe that's not the right Jesus. And so, it's true that the only way to save your life is by following Jesus. That's what we call it. We say, oh, we've been saved. The only way to save your life is by following Jesus. But here's what I want you to know tonight. It's the last oasis. If you're a senior, it's like your for sure last Oasis. I want this to be in your head as you leave. Write it down if you have something to write it down with. Let this go over and over in your head all summer. It's this. The way you save your life, Jesus, is also the way you lose it. The way you save your life is also the way you lose it. If you've got a Bible or a Bible app, I want you to open up to Matthew chapter 16. Matthew chapter 16, we're going to be in verse 24. And the last couple of weeks, we've been in this series called The Wrong Jesus, and we've been going through Matthew chapter 16, and we've looked at some of these different situations where people were just getting Jesus wrong. And so last week, when Titus was preaching, he talks about this interaction that Peter has with Jesus. And Peter gets it right, kind of, sort of, but at the same time, he's still wrong about Jesus. But the part that he gets right, Jesus has just revealed this crazy thing. He's revealed that he is the Messiah. He's the Christ. He's the one who was to come. He's the hope for Israel. He's the hope for the whole world. He's going to establish his kingdom. And so what do you think that Jesus would say next to his disciples after revealing that? Like, surely we would think that he would say something like, so now I'm going to give you power. I'm going to give you status. I'm going to make everything right for you. I'm going to give you these great positions. You're going to have protection. You're going to have this bright future. Surely that's what we think Jesus, the King, would say. But let's see what he says next. Matthew 16, starting in verse 24. Then Jesus said to his disciples, if any of you wants to be my follower, you must give up your own way. That's what Peter was trying to do last week. He was saying, Jesus, sure, you can't die. Jesus, you have to do things the way I think that you should do it. But Jesus says, you have to give up your own way, take up your cross, and follow me. If you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake, you will save it. Wait, what? Like, give up my own way? Take up a cross? Lose my life? Jesus, surely you've got this wrong, right? Surely that can't be correct. Or maybe we're the ones that have Jesus wrong. Have you stopped to think about that before? But we look at that and we're like, Jesus, come on. Don't you know that in this world, like, it's all about survival of the fittest? And don't you know that if you want something, you have to take what's yours and you have to use violence and force to make a name for yourself? And Jesus, it's about taking lives, not about giving up our own life. But Jesus comes in and he tells his followers to put their life on the line. He tells them to lose their life. He tells them they have to be willing to suffer. And so maybe, kind of like the disciples, we sometimes have Jesus wrong. So my question for you tonight, and I want you to consider this really, really seriously. If you have made a decision in your life to make Jesus your Lord, what did you expect to find when you made that decision? Like, what did you expect to find? Did you expect that you would get success? That you would have popularity? That nothing would ever go wrong? That you would just have this perfect life? Did you expect that, like, your family would have wealth? What did you expect when you decided to follow Jesus? Because most of us come to Jesus thinking, like, we get everything that we want. But what if finding Jesus actually means the opposite? What if the way that you save your life is actually the way that you lose it? And so to paint a picture of what Jesus is saying to his disciples here, we have to kind of understand some things about the cross. Like, the cross now is something we put on jewelry. It's something we get tattoos of. It's something we decorate our houses with. But that's not the case in Jesus' time. Like, the cross was the sign of ultimate humiliation. It's a sign of defeat. The cross means the Roman government got the best of you. And many of Jesus' disciples, they were ready to pick up their swords. They were ready to fight, to take back what they thought was theirs. But instead, Jesus comes in and he tells his disciples, no, I want you to put down your swords and I want you to pick up your cross. The way that you save your life is also the way that you lose it. And I think that this is the spot where so many people get this wrong, because Jesus says that to his disciples, but also he says the same thing to you and to me. And Jesus told his followers, you'd have to carry your cross. And the interesting thing to me is Jesus puts his money where his mouth is with this, because Jesus literally carried his cross to his death to sacrifice himself. Like, that's what we call the gospel, the good news. He literally carried the thing that would kill him. And then his followers, they have now this good news that they're carrying out. And for many of them, the thing that they carried, this good news, is what killed many of them. And so following Jesus today doesn't mean we find popularity or perfect happiness or success or problem-free life. It means the reverse. It means that we have to take up our cross. And so for many people in our world, I don't know if you knew this, many people even still today, following Jesus can literally mean losing your life. Did you know that? Like, the latest studies have said that about every 6 minutes, a person in our world dies just for following Jesus. So that means just during the time that I'm up here talking to you, like 4 or 5 people in our world are going to be killed just for following Jesus. And I know that that's not our reality. I know that's not here, but being a Christian in America doesn't mean you don't have to pick up your cross. And in fact, if you think you get to skip that part, you're probably following the wrong Jesus. And for those of you in this room that actually, truly follow Jesus, everywhere, even when you're at school, even when you're around your non-Christian friends, when you actually follow Jesus, you know that this is true. Because when we truly follow Jesus in all areas of our life, which, if I'm honest, is something I know not a lot of people in this room do, but if you did, you would find that it doesn't make you the most popular person or the most cool person ever when you truly follow Jesus in your life. In fact, it typically does the opposite of that. It affects your status. It affects how people view you. And you start being given these labels. So maybe all of a sudden, someone lashes out against you and you choose not to retaliate, so you get labeled as weak. You're viewed as weak. Or maybe you don't use the same words that other people do. You're not into the same things that other people do, so they look at you and you get viewed as weird. Or maybe you don't talk about girls the same way the other boys do, or you don't do the same things with your boyfriend that other girls do, or maybe you don't use people for what you can get out of them, so you're called prude. Or maybe you don't go around just trying to put yourself up, trying to show how you're so much better than everyone else, trying to show how you're the best, how you always win at everything, and so people call you a loser. Or you actually try to thanks, Dakota. Or you actually try to live some of these things out that Jesus calls us to do, but you're just viewed as self-righteous. Or maybe you actually stand up for someone who's constantly beaten down and people look at you and they say that's just pathetic. Or maybe you don't look the same as other people. You don't act the same as other people, and instead of that being celebrated, you're just viewed as strange. People may see you and, they might distance themselves from you. You might face rejection. Like, sometimes it will hurt. But when it comes to following Jesus, the way that you save your life is actually the way that you lose it. And in Luke 14, starting in verse 27, here's what Jesus says. You can just listen to this. It'll be on the screen. Jesus says, "If you do not carry your own cross and follow me, you cannot be my disciple. But don't begin until you count the cost. For who would begin construction of a building without first calculating the cost to see if there's enough money to finish it? Otherwise, you might just complete the foundation before running out of money, and then everyone would laugh at you. They would say, there's that person who started that building and couldn't afford to finish it. Or what king would go to war against another king without first sitting down with his counselors to discuss whether his army of 10,000 could defeat the 20,000 soldiers marching against him? And if he can't, he'll send a delegation to discuss terms of peace while the enemy is still far away. So you cannot become my disciple without giving up everything you own. And many of us are following the wrong Jesus because we've not counted the cost of what it'll actually take to follow him. And so we've taken the parts of Jesus that we like the grace, the salvation, the forgiveness, and we've left all the stuff that we don't like, and we end up following this hybrid version of Jesus that's just the wrong Jesus. Now at this point, in all fairness, you might be sitting there being like, Chris, this is the most depressing message ever. Like, this is really depressing. What is the point of following the right Jesus if it means having to give everything up? If it means living life the way that I want to, if it means all of this and more, why would we want to do that? And it's true that following Jesus, it looks like weakness to a lot of people. When we live a life where we put others first, where we sacrifice, where we follow someone else's way, the world looks at that and they don't get it. It makes no sense. It looks like losing. But there's a twist involved. Listen again to what Jesus says in the passage I read at the beginning. Listen closely. Jesus says, if you try to hang on to your life, if you try to hang on to the way you want to do things, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake, you will save it. I've said this several times tonight. The way that you save your life is also the way you lose it. But the paradox of following Jesus is this. Even though that's true, the life that you gain is so much better than the one that you lose. The life that you gain is so much better than the one that you lose. And it's ironic. It doesn't make sense that somehow when we follow Jesus and we take on all of these labels and more, when we carry our cross, in some way we still experience this life that's so much better than the one that we left behind. When we carry our cross, we find God in new ways. We find God when we put others first. We find God when we give things up. We find God when we're generous. We find God when we go through suffering and rejection. And I know so many people, students and adults alike, who did not count the cost of following Jesus, and they're just like the person in this story that Jesus tells. They start this building project and they never finish it. I know people, they didn't count the cost, and when this kind of stuff came, they said, I'm out. But I have never once in my life met a person who truly counted the cost of following Jesus, who finished building the building, who embraced him with all of their life, who ever even considered going back. I've never met a person. Never. And I've met people who have had everything in the world and are miserable. And I've met people who have literally nothing but Jesus that are the most fulfilled people. They're the most fulfilled people. I've seen lives changed by Jesus. I've seen people meet Jesus and come alive. It's happened to me. I know it's happened to some of you in this room, because when it comes to following Jesus, the way that you save your life is the way that you lose it, but the life that you gain is so much better than the one that you lose. And that's why Jesus says that he came so that we would have life and have it abundantly. That's what Jesus says. I've come that you would have life and have it abundantly. Even though we deny ourselves and take up our cross, we experience true living. It's the paradox. Even though we get all of this, we experience true living. That's why Jesus says, if you give up for your life for my sake, you will save it. And so when we find the real Jesus, we find a Savior who says, to the loser goes the prizes. To the weak goes the power. To the hurting goes the joy. It's like that game that I had CJ and Savannah play at the beginning, right? Losing is actually winning. Losing your life is actually how you save it. So my challenge for you tonight, for the summer, for the rest of your life, is don't fall for the wrong Jesus. This is what we've been talking about in this whole series. Don't fall for the wrong Jesus, this one that offers like this perfect carefree life and just does everything I want and gives me whatever I think that I need. Instead, lose your life for the real Jesus. Because if you do, you are going to find this life that is so much more fulfilling than the one that you lost, plus you get the promise of eternal life with Jesus. So as the band comes back up, maybe tonight, like you're hearing that and you're saying, man, I want to find my life. I want to find that life that you're talking about, this life that God intends for me, that life that is living abundantly. Like if that is you, I would love to talk to you about what it would look like to lose your life for Jesus, to become saved. Come talk to us about that. Or maybe you're a person that if we're just shooting straight tonight, you need to count the cost because you're living somewhere in the middle. And maybe you just need to stop and consider, do I really want to follow Jesus? Because if you do, it's going to come with all of this. It's going to come with these labels. But if you truly want to live a life abundantly, you got to count the cost. You need to decide tonight if following Jesus is worth it to you. And maybe you're a person that actually needs to take up your cross. It's time to actually deny yourself with following Jesus. Like, what would it look like in your life if you actually followed Jesus everywhere? Not just when you're in these four walls, but when you're out in school, when you're out in life, what would it look like if you truly followed Jesus everywhere you went? You might have to carry your cross. Your life might change, but you will gain a life that's so much better than the one you lose. That's what I desire for you tonight. So, as we continue in our time of worship, I just want you to think about that. Have I counted the cost? Do I want Jesus? But do I mean that? Am I willing to take everything that comes along with that? It's going to take faith and trust and involve stepping out, but the life you gain is so much better than the life you lose. So I want you guys to stand up. I want to pray for you, and I want you to think about that as we continue in worship tonight.